The economy. I mean, one of the premises I put out there was why this is so sloppily done in the Ukraine. I mean, did they just think Russia was just going to say, oh, yeah, you can have one of our big naval bases there in the Black Sea. No problem. We're just going to step right aside. It was the same thing in Tartus, Syria, where I'm not even a military guy, and I said, they spent, $9-10 billion on this base? They're not going to walk away and say, sure, let Al-Qaeda have it. Beautiful. And so, I mean, are they wanting to do this to cover up the weak economy? It's teetering. You've been talking about how they're... No, they just want war, period.
No, they want hegemony. Russia, China, Iran are in the way of American hegemony. And they want to weaken those countries and put them in a position where they can't stand up to American purposes. I mean, look, Russia blocked them in Syria. Russia and China blocked them in Iran. They don't want to be blocked. And so what they're going to do now, if they can, they're going to bust up the Russian Federation. They'll pump money into every dissident group anywhere in the Russian Federation. They'll, just like, remember when Putin was last reelected?
Yeah.
Substantial victory. We said it was fraud, he stole the election, and we set loose all the riots in Russia from the American-financed NGOs. So we've got fifth columns throughout Russia, and we fund them with money, and we support the terrorists in Chechnya. And so they are vulnerable to being disrupted by the NGOs that Washington funds. So that's what the goal is. And so why is Ukraine important? Well, you have, as you pointed out, the Black Sea naval base that Russia has there. They have a lease on it until 2042. You've got the eastern Ukraine, which is former Soviet military-industrial complex, you see. And the western Ukraine has always had these extreme nationalists, these ultra-nationalists. They actually fought on the side of the Nazis during World War II. This part of the Ukraine actually fought against the Red Army. Of course, they got wiped out. But so for Washington, okay, look, we can really bring a serious strategic threat to Russia here. We can devalue their nuclear deterrent by putting anti-ballistic missile bases in Ukraine on their border. And so when we put pressure on them, they'll have to think much harder about standing up to it, because we can, we'll have the upper hand militarily. We'll be able to knock out their nuclear deterrent. They won't be able to resist our pressure. So that's the real reason for it. Now, of course, there are other economic reasons. The Western bankers and the Western corporations and Western agribusiness want to get their hands on the Ukraine. They want to loot it. The agribusiness corporations want to get the Ukrainian farmlands. There are questions of, Chevron wants to get in there and frack and do energy exploration. And they want to be able to disrupt the Russian pipelines that run through Ukraine into Western Europe, so that they can get Western Europe off of dependence on Russian energy and ship them over the natural gas that we are fracking here. So it's a multi-dimensioned project. It has many American economic interests in it. When Victoria Nuland spoke at the National Press Club last December and said that Washington had invested $5 billion in subverting the Ukraine, she was talking, her audience were all the people who will profit from looting the Ukraine. And there was a big Chevron sign right there standing beside her while she spoke. So the economic part is to loot the Ukraine. But that isn't the way that the neoconservatives pull all these other economic interest groups into their program of subverting Ukraine. And the reason they want to put it in the EU is so they can put NATO bases there. So the main purpose is what Bolton said, put NATO bases which means U.S. missile bases in the Ukraine.